The Woogeyman, written by Ryan Reis and presented by Ryan and Liv.
It's not unusual for a 4-year-old to have an imaginary friend, but for the past year, little Emily was friends with what her parents thought was the Boogeyman. They thought it was weird how she would be so excited at random moments of the day. She would clap her hands and smile while yelling,
"Woogeyman, Woogeyman."
They thought it strange, but let her be free with her imagination. Better to make friends with the Boogeyman than to be afraid, they figured. They even tried to get her to pronounce it properly after she turned 4. Boogeyman, they would say to her. She could say banana and ball just fine, but for some reason, she wouldn't pronounce the B in Boogeyman. When asked what he looked like, Emily would say that he wore silly hats and had a mustache. One day, when her father was getting ready for a friend's wedding, she pointed at his bow tie and said,
"The Woogeyman wears one of those."
Her mother laughed and said, "This Woogeyman must have a very important job if he wears a bow tie every day." "What color is the Boogeyman's bow tie, sweetheart?" her father playfully asked her.
"Purple with polka dots,"
she replied. Just over a year had passed, and her mother began to notice strange things happening around the house. She would encounter doors and cupboards open, things around the house moved into strange places, and lights turned on in the middle of the night. Despite the annoyance, she never paid it too much attention or thought. She would just give it a look and fix the problem by simply closing the door or shutting the lights back off. She brought it up to her husband a few occasions, hoping that he could make sense of it. But he would just brush it off by saying it was probably him or even Emily and apologized for not paying attention. One afternoon, Emily's mother was preparing her lunch while Emily sat at the kitchen table, drinking her chocolate milk. All of a sudden, she heard her laughing with a mouthful. She turned and warned her she might choke if she keeps fooling around like that. She could see Emily laughing and smiling towards a chair across from her. With a mouth full of chocolate milk, she spat it out little by little as she laughed. Before her mother could say anything to her, she began to gargle the milk and then proceeded to laugh so hard that she had to spit it all out. Her mother yelled at her, telling her to stop playing and stop making a mess. She walked over to her and aggressively took off her shirt to switch it for a dry one. Emily stopped laughing, but kept looking at the chair across from her.
"The Woogeyman told me to do it. He said it's funny."
"You know better than that. Look, you've made a mess everywhere," her mother shouted.
"The Woogeyman told me to..."
Emily started before getting interrupted by her mother. "There is no Woogeyman, Emily. You know that." Just as she shouted, the glass of chocolate milk shattered into pieces. Emily started to cry as her mother stared at the mess in disbelief. She picked up Emily, all while still looking at the shattered glass. She held her in her arms, rocking her up and down, trying to calm her. Later that night, when her husband came home from a double shift, she explained everything to him. To her surprise, he didn't look too shocked. "I've been talking to a few coworkers, and they told me something disturbing. They mentioned a serial killer used to live in this house, way back in the 1940s. Now, I'd have to do some more research, but they said when all the men went to war, he stayed home and was kidnapping and murdering children." "What? In this house? In our home?" shrieked his wife. "Look, I'm sure it's not true, but it's definitely something we can look into. Just not right now. It's way too late to be diving down that rabbit hole tonight. How about you do a deep Google dive first thing tomorrow morning and tell me what you find," her husband stated. "I got asked to work tomorrow, but only a half day," she replied. "Okay, well, as soon as you get home then. I'll even help you." The next morning while at work, she could not stop thinking about the glass and what her husband had said to her about the previous owner of the house. While sitting at her desk, she Googled the laws about disclosing any information before selling a home. Unfortunately, there are no laws in Ontario saying you must disclose any murders that may have taken place in a home. She then Googled her home address. At first she got the address and the directions with the street view of her home. That was followed by listings of restaurants and activities in the area. But as she scrolled down further, she found a website with archived newspaper articles. Killer finally caught after 37 children go missing while fathers fight overseas. Edgar Woodgey, a German male aged 48, was found guilty of the kidnapping and murdering of 35 children. Jacob Browns, age 8, and his little sister Patricia, aged 4, escaped from Woodgey's home in the late hours of the night while Edgar was sleeping. When questioned, the children did not give much information, only that Edgar Woodgey made them call him the Woogeyman. Mr. Woodgey buried the bodies of the children in his basement after removing all the concrete floors. All 35 missing children have been accounted for. She then scrolled down to see the picture attached to the article. Her skin crawled when she saw a black and white photograph of a short, round man with a long handlebar mustache. But the chilling part was the feathered top hat and the large polka dot bow tie the man was wearing. Emily's mother shot up from her seat and headed straight home, yelling that she had an emergency as she exited the office. She sped all the way home, barging into the front door when she arrived. The house was quiet. She looked and called for her husband and Emily through the entire house, but she seemed to be alone. It wasn't until she pulled her phone out and started to call her husband's number that she heard a slight banging, followed by his ringtone. The sound of it all led her to the door of the basement. Hello? She said nervously. The banging noise became ear-piercing when she finally opened the door. It sounded like metal to concrete. She called for her husband as she walked down the stairs. When the noise came into earshot, she saw him standing in the middle of the rec room, facing away from her. A large square of the carpet had been removed, exposing the cement underneath. She watched as her husband continued to slam a large sledgehammer onto the bare floor. She called to him one last time before he finally stopped and began to laugh manically as he slowly turned to her. "Your husband's not here right now," he said in a weird voice with a large and unsettling smile. "But I could take you to him if you'd like." "Where's Emily? Where's Emily?" she screamed, while slowly backing towards the stairs. "Emily's around here somewhere. We're playing hide and seek, and once I find her, I win," he replied. He began to laugh as she made a mad dash back up the stairs. Her possessed husband followed directly behind her, still holding the sledgehammer. He laughed as she slammed the door behind her, holding it closed with all of her might before reaching for a waist-high cabinet beside her. She grabbed it with one hand and dragged it towards her in front of the door, adding a little more weight on top of her own. Her husband continued to push and bang on the door a few more times until the sledgehammer came crashing through the center of the door, striking her in the head. Blood splattered as she fell to the floor. Emily had left her hiding spot when she heard her mother and all the loud noises. She was standing there when her mother got knocked to the ground. Then, a voice that wasn't her dad's came through the hole in the door. "Emily?"
Woogeyman!
She yelled in excitement as she ran towards the door, completely disregarding her mother's body.
Wait, you're not Woogeyman. You're just Daddy,
she said disappointedly. "No, Emily, it's me. Ha ha ha. Your friend. I told you I would take care of everything so you and I could live and play together forever and ever. We're going to have so much fun," he said while pushing the door open. "Come on down, Emily. No parents, no rules. Just you and your best friend, the Woogeyman. You remember why they call me that, right?" he asked while Emily smiled and nodded her head wildly. "Because I boogie and woogie," they both said while shaking their hips in a shimmying motion. "Ha ha 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 ha. Okay, good. Now come on down here with me. I have something to show you."